Hey guys, sometimes we're just waiting on the software, so give me just a second here. Hey, good evening, everybody. We're back again, and you can see a little bit of the sea breeze. You notice a very distinct change in the opening sequence there. Past couple nights, we were showing you clear mornings and lots of mid-clouds, and now we've got the moisture flooding in, and you can really see it here. And you're seeing the passage of the sea breeze rolling through here. See how things are more vertical? We're looking to the southwest, stuff coming up from all the way from the Houston-Beaumont area, and there it comes. There's the sea breeze rolling through about 3 or 4 o'clock. And nice towers, but can't quite do it there. No rain here. So in the wake, look how clear it is. And I'll show you a little bit of that on the satellite photo there. So now you've seen the sea breeze, and let's look at the weather. Outside, that's what it looks like right now. Not much going on, very clear. And I can hear a neighbor about a mile away target shooting. And that's just the nature of living out in the Texas countryside. Look out west, though. Big change in the weather. You can see Tonopah here, 60 degrees, north wind, gusting to 30. This is very unusual. This time of year, you get up to the, what is that interstate up there, Interstate 70 or 80? Anyway, Winnemucca, Battle Mountain, 40s even up in that area. So there's a huge change compared to the 90s in New Mexico. So we've definitely got a front. Those fronts are a lot more challenging to find in the western U.S. compared to here on the plains. Here on the plains, I mean, it's easy. You just find where the wind shift is. You find a very distinct temperature, dew point contrast, and you draw your front. Out west, it can be even more of a challenge. So we can kind of use that imaginary car drive. We can go from maybe Tucson. We've got 95 degrees off the bottom of the screen. 92 at Phoenix. Okay, that's getting cool. Then we get up to Kingman, 76. Okay, that's... For June, that's very cool weather. 79 also cool. Although the southwest wind at Vegas, that's normally associated with warm air. So I don't know. This is kind of an in-between area. And then we definitely hit the cold air up in Northern California and Northern Nevada. So we're going to go with maybe a cold front. We should always bias our selection to the warm side of the gradient. So I'm going to go probably something like this. Let's say that looks pretty reasonable. 60s there in Utah. Okay, that looks good. Compared to 80s around Aspen and Trinidad, 91 in Denver. Gusting to 38. That's kind of like a blast furnace there. And we've got some storms up in this area here. Northern Nebraska, we're going to show you a tornado watch up in effect. And in fact, I got GR level 2 here. A couple of tornadic storms around the Scottsbluff area. So this is Denver right down here at the bottom. Cheyenne, Greeley, Akron. And then we go up to the Nebraska Panhandle. And there's our tornadic storm as seen on the Cheyenne radar. And I think that's about as close as we can get. We're not within range of the North Platte radar. So let's check out our storms there. First thing we should do is take a look at the velocity. Definitely got some rotation in that thing. Remember, reds or outbounds. Got about 49 out right in this area here. And then we have our inbounds over here, 35 in, about 70 to 80 knots of rotation. This is up at about 8,000 feet, pretty high up in the cloud. But it definitely looks like some sort of meso located right in this area. And I'll put a marker there. Actually, I've got a 0.4, so I can refine that a bit better. Okay, we got a tighter meso. This is way down at 5,000 feet, so I'm going to put the dot here. And right in that notch there. It's got kind of an HPS structure, and you can see we're getting some very high reflectivity there. 62, 65 dBz, some pretty good hail. Do we have overhang? That's another big indicator of a strong cell. We can just go up to higher tilts here, and I can already see we're forming a bit of a beware right there. So I'm going to put a dot there. So we're going to be looking at that place in a minute. We go up to higher levels. That could be the beware. Maybe here. Possibly right there. And then we get up to the higher tilts of the storm. And this is where we would lose the beware, and we would be looking at mostly overhang. And I think this is our overhang right here. This is up at about 30,000 feet. Then we get up to the tops of the storm, 45, and nothing up at 58,000 feet. Okay, so we can take a slice. I'm going to go from northwest to southeast. Kind of coarse looking. But yeah, there's the overhang right there in the southeast side of the storm. Very blocky. We're at a pretty far range from the radar. You can see the higher parts of the storm here up to about 50,000 feet. Let me take a couple of more slices. We're looking in that bear's cage area right here. And it does have a little bit of a multicellular structure. That's one thing I do notice. You see one cell here, another here, and another there. So there's probably a little bit of that going on. There's the storm. Oops. Back that off a little bit. And we'll check out the tornado warnings. Radar indicated rotation, hail up to 3 inches in diameter, and then the north one. Tornado ping pong ball sized hail, radar indicated rotation. So, like I said, we've got kind of HPS structure. There's the bear's cage. This is the main rotation area. This is going to be roughly about, 10 miles southeast of Scottsbluff at this time. Nothing on spectrum width, nothing too interesting there. And let me check some of the other products. Hold on, we got a new tornado warning out. Particularly dangerous situation, damaging tornado spotters confirm large tornado southwest of McGrew. So you can see this is where we're really counting on spotters because we're in between the radar sites. Here's the Cheyenne radar. And we're looking about 73, 74 miles away. 60 is kind of the cutoff for accurate tornado detection, so we're just pretty much out of range of all these radars, and it's going to get worse as it gets into this area right here. But as you've seen, we do have spotters there, and there's our storm. Looks like a little bit of a bear's cage there. There's our velocity, and dang, yeah, there's some good rotation, and you can see not only the rotation on that last frame. Let me back that up. You can also see convergence. So you see this velocity dipole here. Okay, so here's inbound, here's outbound. Okay, the radar's over here, back this way. And you can see the orientation of this dipole is a little bit skewed. It's not perfectly perpendicular to that line. If it was perpendicular, we would be looking at pure cyclonic rotation. But the fact that we've got the inbounds on this side and the outbounds on this side, that's a convergent signature. This is convergent rotation, located right there on that one frame. This is the last frame, not the current one. And you can see that whatever that rotation is right there near McGrew. And then the following frame, we kind of lose that and get into this range folded area here. Sometimes you can go up to a higher tilt and pick that up, sometimes not, but I do see the higher inbounds here or the higher outbounds there, so looks like whatever that is crossing the freeway there, crossing the highway, Route 92, just east of McGrew. So there's our storm there. Okay, let's move on. We'll come back and check on this in a little bit. We got to keep going and looking at the weather. Definitely a very cool storm there. And I can show you the satellite. I've got that set up here. Let's see, I've got 30 frames up. There we go. That's our Nebraska storm right there. GOES 16, this is the next generation geostationary satellite. You can see the overshooting top right there. Let me see if I can update that a little bit. The last frame I had there was 30 after the hour. We'll see if I can update that. And while it does that, let me take a look at the chat here, see what we have going on. See, we have Andrew here. Says active out in eastern Wyoming, western Nebraska. Ryan is here, hoping everybody is safe, watching the skies in Nebraska and Wyoming. Eddie W., Fun with Tech. Michael Burrell asking about the Nebraska storms, 3 possible tornado spots. Burl H. checking in, Megan John. Ryan watched the house in Wyoming sustain a direct hit from that tornado earlier on the live stream. So I guess we're talking about the Chaser webcast there. It's amazing these days. 25 years ago, you would have had to wait maybe a week or two to trade tapes and see the storm action, and now we can see the stuff live. It's really amazing. Alexi is here. Robert Terrell. Ryan says, pretty graphic, violent damage from that tornado strike, violent hailfall from baseball, softball-sized hailstones. Freedom, that's the sound of freedom you hear in America. Texas shooting, referring to the shooting earlier. Ancient astronaut, 87 degrees, Canyon Lake. Alexi looking for live streams. Justin checking in. And I'm scrolling through the chat here real quick. Lloyd McCarter in Little Rock says the moisture flow there is stalled and moved to the east. The storms today were right where SPC said they would be, according to Justin. Victor Cabot made it in. And Ryan Toomey's Live Storms Media, YouTube, posted for public viewing. Andrew says Carpenter, Wyoming tornado hit a barn, took the roof off the house, but the residents were unharmed. Ryan sent the message about the NHC update. I got that. And Lloyd watching some storms progressing across Louisiana to South Arkansas. Tropical Storm Calvin alive. We're going to look at that in a minute. And PDS warning for the storm from Jacob Hernandez. Carl Berghoff joining us. And the technology today now available will be incredible this season coming up, according to Ryan. And I've seen some internal documents about the 5G standard. I don't know if any of you have kept up on that, but 5G is going to bring, well, that hasn't been ironed out yet, but they're developing some technologies that'll bring some very fast broadband into the field, and that could mean lots of HD video, maybe a few chase seasons from now. So anyway, we're looking at the storm here in Nebraska. There's the latest frames. This is the big tornadic storm, and looks like some other big storm up here in northwest Nebraska. There it is right there, just barely out of radar range. Severe thunderstorm warning on that. Okay, let's go to the charts. This is the SPC chart for Wyoming there, and you can see we've got an upslope day. Flow out of the southeast feeding these storms. There's our tornadic storm there near Scottsbluff, and we're just basically bringing the moisture northward from Kansas and then up into the higher terrain. So that's one form of getting parcel lift, is just move it up the slope of the Great Plains there. Let's see, dew point. We'll check out the moisture field, and you can see the dry line. I'll draw that in orange. No, orange is not going to be good. Let's try red. So you can see I'm placing that on the east side of the moisture gradient. So roughly from about North Platte, and then it arcs eastward towards the Cheyenne area. And then it moves down south through the Dodge City area. So that's the moisture field, and there's the moisture supply right there. Moisture convergence, theta E. A lot of these products are not going to be too useful right now that convection has broken out, but we would use theta E for forecasting initiation, for example. Let me see if I can go back a couple of hours. Let's see, when is this chart here? Let's see, going back 4 hours, that's going to be 21Z, that's 4 p.m. And yeah, you can see the higher theta E's right in this area. See this 364? This is a combination of temperature and moisture, and this is basically what brings your lifted parcel furthest over to the right side of the skew-t diagram. So the parcels in this area especially good, and that is right upstream of where we've seen those tornadoes over the past hour. And we roll that forward, and now, of course, the fields are kind of useless because the convection kind of blurs that out, but it does look like a little bit of good moisture hanging around the area north of North Platte right there, in that region right there. Okay, let's see. Upper level charts, we'll go to the 250 millibar chart from Canada. I'm hearing distant locusts outside, or cicadas. That's the first for this year. The sound of summer. I can barely hear that. Okay, jet stream coming on shore. Split flow looks like. One split goes around the California coast. So this is definitely a baroclinic area out in the southwest deserts. And then another split up in the Canadian region right there. Subtropical jet looks like that definitely is evident from about Tucson. Well, this is way off the bottom part of the chart, but 50 to 70 knots showing from Tucson to Del Rio to Corpus Christi. That's as far as I can drag that chart there. Okay, but yeah, 200 millibar chart. This shows this a little bit better. This is this morning, and this is the polar front jet up to the north. And then to the south, this is the subtropical jet. We've got the characteristic anticyclonic flow, and there are 200 millibars. We're showing 55, 65 knots right there. So if we could get any storms going in the El Paso area, Davis Mountains, these strong upper-level winds would help augment those storms. And you can see we lose that subtropical jet once we get down to 500 millibars, but the polar front jet continues to show up. And this supports the idea of the front being out to the east. You remember I was kind of hedging between Las Vegas out in this area here, and I decided to place it further east. That puts it on the warm side of the jet axis. So everything matches. This looks good. Front is basically moving through the Four Corners area, through Tucson, through Grand Junction into Colorado. And one way we can find that front is potential temperature. This is a potential temperature plot from Albany. Albany.edu, the weather department there. Normally what you're going to see this time of year, you're going to see a lot of very high potential temperature in this entire area. That's the strong heating in the desert southwest. But it appears we've got a gradient. This is unusual. So being able to recognize those changes, that's very important. And now that we've spotted that, we can kind of place the front like that. And we can also use tools like digital atmosphere to place the potential temperature line. So I'll do that real quick. We just go to Analysis, Temperature, Potential Temperature, and that'll draw out that field right there. And it's a little bit noisy, but I can kind of place that like that. And these gradients that you see right here in between individual stations, that becomes pretty important when you're in the mountainous regions. So very strong gradient in this area. That would be indicative of the front moving through that area. So I'd probably be going something like, maybe something like that right there. So that's the front, and unfortunately, that's mostly moving to the northeast. I don't think we're going to see much cooling here in Texas. Okay, looking down south, yeah, we do got some tropical action. You can see lots of thunderstorm activity there in Mexico. A lot of this is there because we've had a push of dense air southward onto the Mexican coast. So we've got a few boundaries hung up in the mountains here. And this is a closer look at the storms there. And we've got Tropical Storm Calvin. Here, do you see Calvin? Okay, that was a cheap shot. I had to do that. But anyway, yeah, this is Calvin right there. And we can see that on the NHC plot. Looking at 35 knots sustained. Tropical Storm Calvin, 35 knots sustained. 1,005 millibars, that's pretty high. Moving west-northwest. And the projection for that over the next 72, 96 hours. Well, these are the model forecasts, but the official forecast is bringing this kind of west-northwest along the coast. Very, very slow movement. And I suspect that this is what the models were trying to bring northward around the 20th. I think they were grabbing onto maybe either Calvin or maybe some other disturbance along this intertropical convergence zone and was bringing that northward. I'll show you that in a short while here. Okay. Thickness, isobars, and we can definitely pick out the front there in the Four Corners area. So we're getting consistency between all the charts, and that supports the idea of a warm front in Nebraska, maybe where we have that storm there in Scottsbluff. A little bit of a warm front, maybe a little bit of backed winds up in this area here. But the main baroclinic system in southeastern Wyoming right there. And then the cold air mass out over the west coast right in that region right there. And to get a rough idea which way it's going to be moving, we can use the steering flow. We take the synoptic scale picture, or even maybe the planetary scale picture, and we look at the large scale thickness lines here. And we can see There's one gradient right there. There's another gradient right there. These are the jets. And basically, these are going to carry this system along with that flow. So we should see that system emerge in the Dakotas, up into Ontario, and mostly affect the northern plains right in this area. And I guess we can take a look at some soundings on the plains there. I guess we should look at North Platte. This would be representative of the parcels feeding the storm there, possibly. See a very steep lapse rate there at North Platte. Steep lapse rate, cap, and very, very steep lapse rate right here. So this is the moisture. This is not very rich moisture. You can see we bring this down. We're talking about dew points around the upper 50s, but it is pretty deep. Probably about 5,000 or 6,000 feet deep there. So we'll lift that parcel, maybe take 87 degrees for a temperature. Okay, obviously we're still pretty capped at this point. There's definitely some cape there. This is the convective inhibition. And we've obviously overcome that, and that may be due to the added lift in the higher terrain around Cheyenne. Cheyenne's at a much higher elevation. That'll bring the parcels up to even higher elevations and clear the cap a lot easier. That's probably what's happened, and we could also be seeing the effects of a shortwave affecting the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. So yeah, let's take a look at the dynamics here. Starting at midday, we've got a ridge from Omaha up to eastern Montana. The high plains starting to come under the influence of this cyclonic pattern here. I see maybe one little shortwave here. This is midday, remember. Let's see if that emerges. Yeah, I don't know if I want to call that a shortwave or not. Shortwave troughing. When I see blotches like that, that kind of tells me that maybe that's a little bit of feedback from convection that's developed, kind of interfering with the model there. So I think maybe the main contributor to clearing that cap could just be orographics in southeastern Wyoming and the parcels there in North Platte making it up to higher elevations. Okay, we'll take a look at the forecast here and start, since we've been going on for about 30 minutes here. Forecast for the rest of the night. There's our storm right there around Scottsbluff. We know that the warm front oriented something like that. And we're going to see the MCS kind of push off into the cooler air. Some beneficial rains up in the South Dakota area. This is corn country and barley. I think a lot of the barley is grown there in eastern North Dakota, and I don't know what else is grown there, but this is very important for the agriculture in that region. That moves up into the northern Minnesota area by tomorrow morning. And we're left with this low pressure area right there in northern Nebraska. So this is our setup for tomorrow. Looks like maybe a warm front kind of like that, and then our cold front extending south and possibly a dry line mixed in, something like that. So this could be a setup tomorrow for possibly severe weather in South Dakota, maybe at first glance. I haven't looked at anything. I'm just taking a guess here looking at the models. So this is midday. I would probably be thinking maybe in this area here. You can see the stronger moisture advection in this region right there, intersecting the boundary right around Sioux Falls there. So anyway, we'll check that out and see what the GFS says. Okay, here's our dew point, and you know what? I think I'm going to start here with the precipitable water, because it is June. This is very important, especially when we're bringing air masses out of the tropics. We want to follow this. Okay, so the better moisture up in Louisiana, we've got 2 inches of precipitable water right in this area here, and about 1.5 inches over Iowa. Some of it making it up into South Dakota. And over the next few days, let's see what that's going to do. You can see our main baroclinic low right there tomorrow over South Dakota. Looks like a little bit of a moisture axis right there out ahead of that. The bulk of the deeper moisture, though, going up the Mississippi River into the Ohio River region. And then just the general trends over the next week or so. Looks like we bring the moisture further north into the Midwest, up into the Great Lakes region. And behind that cold front, looks like we get some drying out in the Rockies and the northern plains. And you can see that's going to shift things down into the central plains, down in this region right there. So we're going to be watching this right here for severe weather later next week. Not much of a pressure gradient on the Texas coast. Very unimpressive moisture feed. Not much coming up from the south. So we don't see values up very high on the Great Plains. Most of the better moisture out in Florida on the East Coast right in this area here. And this is the surge from the south that I was talking about yesterday. I don't know if you can see this. Let me move the map. This is around the 18th on Sunday. And you can see the surge of 2 inches coming northward. And this is that system the GFS has been trying to bring northward for about the 3rd or 4th week of June. That looks like it's heading to Texas, so maybe a bit of tropical action, at least in South Texas right here. And elsewhere, it looks like up to the north, pretty good baroclinic system there. This is around the 23rd. You can see high pressure ridging all the way down into the northern plains. So it looks like we've got some sort of warm front through the Oklahoma area, so that's going to be a focus for severe weather. So spring is not quite over. Looks like we've got maybe 1 or 2 more weeks of spring. And then at that point, we'll probably be heading more into a summer-like pattern. And just to compare things, let me look at the Canadian model. I had that up earlier. Yep, okay, GDPS. That's the Canadian model. NAM. Nope, I don't have the Canadian model. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at the thickness and precipitation over the next week or so using the GFS, and we're going to kind of close out things with that. So let's check that out. Before we get into that and look at that, let me check the chat here. Okay, people checking out the live streams there with the tornadoes there in Nebraska. Ancient Astronaut mentioning the cicadas. Ryan talking about NHC, about Calvin there, clicking on the Pacific region, and you can find the storm that way. Big Bermuda High sitting exactly where it sits this time of year. Big block over the Atlantic region north of the Bahamas from Ryan. Florida expected to get hit again next week. And Carl says he has a time lapse that's pretty short. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm behind a little bit on my email, but so if you've sent anything, I should be back up to speed tomorrow. Okay, so let's move things forward and look at things over the next week and see what the GFS has for precipitation. Okay, for tomorrow when we do the webcast, looks like a bit of a baroclinic low, maybe a heat low over Kansas out in this area here, probably a dry line extending southward. GFS going for a little bit of development along the Caprock around the Elk City, Wellington area there. And then we have that front extending northward. There's the warm front, so it looks like we've also got maybe a few storms going up from Sioux Falls down to the Yankton area there. Triple Point up near Fargo. See, I guess we really should be doing a chase forecast, but we've been going on for 37 minutes here. We'll just have to cover this tomorrow. However, let's move this forward, and we can see the big low moving up into Manitoba there. So the webcast for Wednesday, low pressure there in Manitoba. This is kind of an occluded system. And then the main cold front looking something like this from Minnesota, maybe down to the Kansas City, Omaha area. Warm front through Lake Superior like that. So probably some wet weather there for Wisconsin and Minnesota, Iowa. Then for Thursday, that system wraps up there up in Ontario. And we do know that that old frontal boundary is somewhere in this area. It's probably becoming somewhat stationary, being reinforced a little bit by outflow from some of these MCSs overnight. So model going for a little bit of a MCS over the Omaha to Salina area there on Thursday. And you can see that we do have a little bit of a moisture feed northward, and dry line probably set up somewhere in this area here. Heading into Friday, looks like our baroclinic low picks up right here in South Dakota. You can see the thickness line. See this packing right here? That looks to be our new system coming together here, just kind of picking up in a little bit of a wave there along that front. So storms once again for Minnesota, Iowa, South Dakota. Things look kind of dry along the dry line. Then for Saturday, things move northeastward. Probably another MCS sweeping through Wisconsin there. There's the fronts there. You can see the moisture feed mostly heading up to Missouri and Illinois there this weekend. Again, this is Saturday. Looks kind of like a lot of downslope here in Texas. Then for Sunday, that frontal boundary looks like it's being reinforced a little bit. So you see that right there, high pressure kind of nosing in from the Pacific Northwest, reinforcing that. MCS is also reinforcing the boundary a little bit. And the moisture supply looks like it is headed mostly for eastern Oklahoma and Missouri. So storms probably from Wichita all the way out to the St. Louis area, Ozarks for Sunday. Then on Monday, stagnant boundary sinking southward to the Red River. Very weak flow of moisture northward being disrupted by this tropical system off to the south part of the map. Let me see if I can show that to you. See that coming up from the south? Of course, this is up in the air because the global models don't handle these tropical storms too well. But we will keep an eye on that. If that does not happen, we should see more moisture funneling northward, and that with the boundary up in Texas would give us a pretty good chance of rain there around the 19th and 20th. And let's see, we get to the end of the run, and it looks like just boundaries pushing southward through the plains. Good chance of precip anywhere from the Dakotas all the way down to Louisiana. Looks like above average for that area. And then things get really active here in Oklahoma around the 24th. Model going for a very strong front there on the weekend of the 24th. Okay, I think that's about all I got here. Let's check out the chat. In fact, let me go back to that Scottsbluff storm. Still got a tornado warning on that. Still pretty far from all the radars. And earlier we had that. Let's see. I'm trying to remember where that storm was earlier. Yeah, it was near McGrew. Looks like the storm is affecting that same area. Velocity showing some very strong outbounds in this region here. We got 71 out in this area here. And up here we've got 60 in. So we got about 110, 120 knots of broad scale rotation in this area. But this is about 8,000 feet up in the storm, so our ability to detect what's going on at cloud base or below is very limited. But certainly looks like some potential somewhere in between for a tornado in this wrapped up area. Definitely not ideal viewing conditions there. Ryan says, have you noticed the high temperatures across the country? A good discussion about it today at 12 noon from NOAA. I haven't seen that. Where would that be? You said 12 noon from NOAA, from a regional forecast office or WPC? I'll take a look at that. Since tonight's webcast, Robert Terrell, since tonight's webcast started some storm activity building in the area, fingers crossed, trying to move off the cap rock as usual, but it could happen. And Robert says, rain would be great, over 100 degrees now, and it's summer. I did want to thank all the Patreon donors. Let me put up that page there, Patreon. I appreciate the donations from Ryan, Toomey's, Andrew, John Huntington, Ron Chalfant, Steve Witt, Robert Vermillion, Jeremy Mattingly, Sarah Wood, Tom Johnson, Thomas Fortner, Justin Pulliam. All of you, I appreciate the donations, and I've only had 2 since April 7th, so I could really... I would appreciate a few more donations coming in to keep the channel going. This helps me balance out things between my programming and writing, because this video project takes hours every day. So anything you want to contribute, again, send that to patreon.com/metlab, and it will absolutely be appreciated. And I think that's all I got for today. We'll check things out tomorrow. And until then, stay safe and take it easy, stay cool, and we'll see you then. Have a good evening, guys.